All right, everybody, what's going on, man? How y'all doing? Welcome to today's edition of SWAC Talk, the show we cover the SWAC inside and out. I am your tour guide around the SWAC Seawells coming at you. And today we are gonna start something that we're gonna try to do every week during the season, from now until probably right up until the SWAC tournament, and that's gonna be weekly power rankings. This week is gonna kind of be more um, almost pretty much by standing order, although I shuffled them up a little bit. But we're gonna change these every week. Um, these are going to be more indicative of weekly performance more than record. Now, if a team is undefeated for each week, they're going to continue to stay at top or near. Or if a team continues to be winless throughout the season, they're going to always hover around the bottom. But wins and losses during that week matter a little bit more than just the record. So who you beat and when you beat them is going to matter a lot in these rankings. So these are going to change every week. But this one is pretty much as close to chalk as far as standing goes. I just wanted to put one out this week to get it started. Next week, I'm quite sure we're going to see a lot of changes. But what we're going to do is we're going to go team by team, and I'm going to give my thoughts on that team and why I have them where I have them, and we'll go from there. So y'all make sure y'all check out those socials: Facebook is Swag Talk, Instagram Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76. Don't forget to like the video, comment, and share your thoughts. Let me know who you think should be 1 through 12 or whatever. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. That definitely be greatly appreciated if you haven't done so. But let's go ahead and make this happen. So we're gonna go ahead and start off our rankings. We're gonna go from 12 to 1, and number 12 is the Mississippi Valley State Delta Devils. Probably not a surprise to anybody. This team just has not really been good this season. They're 0-4 in conference, 2-15 overall. They're on an 8-game losing streak. Um, and this past week, they lost to Texas Southern and Prairie View at home. So they've lost 2 home games, 2 road games, and so they are really struggling. This week they take their they take this week they take their trip to Florida, playing Bethune-Cookman on Saturday and FAMU on Monday. So that FAMU Valley game is a game of winless teams. So that could possibly be one of our games of the week. But the Delta Devils this season, they haven't really done a lot, and I'm using conference only stats when I do go over stats because everybody plays such different non-conference schedules. Some teams are honestly really good in SWAC, but they play such hard schedules out of conference that you don't really know who this team is. So using conference stats here, I think fits better for me than football, um, because teams play so many non-conference games, and such a varying degree. But right now, Valley is only averaging 60 points a game, and they're giving up 79. So they're not really scoring, and they're not really stopping anybody from scoring. And they're shooting 41%. 40% from the field in conference, and the defense is giving up 47. So they're, again, not a great defensive team, and they're struggling to really put the ball in the basket. Only shooting 26% from three as well. Um, One thing I love to look at in conference play is rebounding, and right now Valley is only averaging 30 rebounds a game, and the opponents are averaging 39. So they're getting out rebounded by 9 rebounds a game. And when you look at turnovers, to me, which is another important stat, Valley averages 15.8 rebounds a game. Turnovers a game, and they're forcing 13. So they're a little sloppy with the ball, which is not to be unexpected from a team that struggles to play offense. Alvin Stredick right now is their leading scorer at 12.2 points per game. Um, and so he's shooting 43% from the field as well in conference play. Um, like I said, this team is just they are where they are. I don't think they're gonna move much at all this season. I don't think they're gonna go 0-18, but I do think I do think barring upsets that they're probably gonna be in this 12 spot for the bulk of these rankings. Um, I would just like to see them play some games, and just keep themselves in games, and I think right now they're struggling to do that. They lost to Prairie View by 9. They got beat by 29 TSU last week. They lost by 12 to Alabama A&M, and they lost by 29 again to Bama State. So they've lost all their games in blowout fashion, including almost 230-point deficits. So they are pretty much wholeheartedly in this 12 spot. Number 11 is another winless team, and that's FAMU. Right now, the Rattlers, they're 0-3 in conference and 3-11 overall. They have lost 6 games in a row. And in conference play, the closest loss, like I said, they lost to Bethune-Cookman to open up the conference schedule. They lost that game. Where is that score? They lost that game. They lost the game by 7, 62-55. They got blown out by Southern by 30 plus, and then they lost to Grambling on Saturday on Monday by 7 points. So they're not that far out. I think that Southern game is an outlier. They just shot horribly in that game. I don't think the team is as bad as that game was. And I do think this team is gonna be in the mix. I don't think they're gonna be a team that's gonna be in this 11th spot for a long time. I think they're gonna pick up some wins here and there because I do think that they have some talented guys, and they are a team that loves to shoot the three ball. This coming into this in conference play, they're averaging about they're averaging 6.7 made threes per game. Now before the Southern game, they came in averaging like 9. I think they made like 9 threes against Bethune. But they're a team who can score when possible. If you don't defend them well, they're gonna hurt you. They do have a couple guys who can put some points on the board. Sterling Young is a guy who can shoot. He's shooting. Let me pull up the conference on the stats. Right now, he's shooting 42% from the field and 32% from three, averaging 14.6 points per game. And Milton Matthews is another guy that can light it up. He's shooting 40% from three, and he's averaging 17.6 points per game. So that's a nice 2-man attack. I'm not really too fond of their inside presence right now, but I think I think they're a team who can be in the mix. I think their team, if their shots are falling, I think that they're gonna be right there. I think they're gonna be a team that's more dangerous at home than on the road. Because when you have a team with a lot of new guys like they do with a new coach, there's gonna be a lot of ups and downs with this team. And right now they're kind of trending downward because they haven't won a game yet. Um, but I think they have the ability to get themselves there if they can make some shots. Defensively, they are giving up a lot of points, which if you give up over 80 in one game and over 70 in another, you're gonna give up a ton of points. But I think that's gonna level out for FAMU. I don't think FAMU is gonna be in this spot for a long time. I think Coach Crary is gonna have those guys gelling. They're still trying to figure out who they are. They're still trying to. These guys have only played 16 games together. They're a new team, so I think they're gonna be a team who. Assuming they played 14 games together, they're going to be a team who I think when you get into early February, after a couple more weeks, I think they're going to start to gel, and I think they're going to be able to find themselves picking up a couple wins. They do have 2 games that are winnable this weekend. They get Valley on Saturday at home, and they get Pine Bluff at home on Saturday and Valley at home on Monday. Those are 2 teams that they can beat. Neither one of those teams are world beaters, but they can cause problems. But they're at home, so that could be the first step to getting themselves right. A good weekend here will definitely keep them out of the 11th spot, and it's vital for them to start to win games because they have a tough road trip coming up the following week with a 2-game stretch through Mississippi. So they need to really take advantage of these 2 home games. and pick up some wins because you don't want to, you don't really want to find yourself on the outside looking in. The SWAC is taking 10 teams into the tournament, so you definitely don't want to be number 11. So the margin of error it slims out even more when more teams make the tournament. There's less spots to for teams to not make it, and I think being in that 11th spot, you're gonna find yourself on the outside looking in. So I think this weekend is very big for them. And I do think the Rattlers are gonna bump up in the rankings this next week. So definitely keep an eye out on their performance on Saturday and Monday. Next up is number 10, and that's the UAPB Golden Lions. Just like I said with FAMU, this is team lost a lot of key guys, man. They lost Kylan Milton, Joe French. Um, they lost a ton of they lost a ton of scoring from last season. This was a team that really shot the ball extremely well last season from outside. They didn't really defend well, but they scored a lot of points, and because of the fact that they didn't defend well, that kept them at home in March instead of playing in the tournament, which I thought they would have been a team that would have been dangerous in a one and done situation with their shooting, but they hit a lull and just couldn't get out of it. Right now they're 0-3 and 3-13 in conference, and they're on a 3-game losing streak. Their losses are to both Alabama teams and Prairie View, which again they led Prairie View by I think 12 or 13 points in the first half, and Prairie View just wiped that away in the second half and won that game going away. They had a game scheduled to take something on Saturday, but it was postponed to February because of the icy conditions up in Pine Bluff. So they only have played 3 games instead of 4 as they would have played. And again, they are on a Florida trip this week with FAMU on Saturday and Bethune on Monday. Um, Again, this is a team. I think there's a team that still wants to shoot the ball. I think there's still a team that's gonna shoot a lot of threes. Right now, they're making 8 threes a game, so they are knocking down a lot of threes. They have attempted this season in conference play. They've attempted. Where is it? They've attempted 74. Is it? Yeah, they've attempted 74 threes in conference play. So they've shot a lot of threes. Now that's kind of not on the super high end, but they are a team who will let it fly. Dr. Bradley is a guy who had a great opening weekend. He's averaging 25.6 points per game. Didn't necessarily have a great game against PV, but he's a guy who can score. He had 30 plus in his first 2 games. Right now, he's shooting 61% from the field, so he's gonna be a guy to kind of keep an eye out on as you move forward throughout the season. Um, like I said, he's only played in 3 games, so he hasn't really had a lot of action this season. But he's hit the ground running. Christian Moore is another guy averaging 16 points per game in conference. He's shooting 44% from three. Caleb Jones is shooting 45% from three. So they have 3 guys who, Bradley is 2 or 4 from three, so he's shooting 50%. But they have 2 guys with some range that can knock down those shots, and they have 3 guys averaging double figures. Um, uh, Jones with 10, Moore with 16, and Bradley with 25. So the potential for them to be a team that can score is still going to be there. Um, this season, I think seeing them be a better defensive team is going to be vital. The opponents are shooting 48% against them, which is the worst in the league. So they still aren't really locking down people inside the 3-point line. Defensively, they're pretty solid at 3-point defense at about 30%, but inside 3-point range, they're really struggling to get those stops there. And defensively, they're giving up a lot of points. They're giving up 85 points per game in conference play. So they really, they're scoring 78 points, but they're giving up 85. So even though they're scoring almost 80 points a game, they're still giving up a ton of points, and that's really going to hurt you in games, obviously. And they're a solid rebounding team. They average 40 rebounds a game, so they're a lot more sturdy inside than they were last season. But they just haven't really been able to put it together early. And like I said with FAMU, this weekend is vital for them. Again, it's too early to say, make or break, do or die, but you really need to, you don't want to keep a losing streak too long. Bethune's going to be a tougher task for them, but FAMU is a game I think it is winnable for them. Um, I do think this is a tournament team. I think they're going to make the SWAC tournament. I think they're going to probably be in that 7 to 10 range because I just don't like their defense right now. They can score and they're going to be dangerous at home because they shoot well. Now they didn't shoot well at home against Prairie View, but the potential for them to knock down shots, which they did on the road, is there. So if you can knock down shots on the road, your shots are going to start falling at home. So, I think that that's going to be a key factor for them is getting stops and making sure that shots are falling and making sure that their big guys, when I say big guys, I mean the scorers, making sure those guys stay hot. And now I don't know if Dr. Bradley going to be at average 25 for the whole conference season. Numbers may slide, but Moore is going to have to step in there and help out as well, and Jones as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing this team in action. I think this is a good weekend for them. I think that FAMU matchup is big for them right now early. And Bethune is a good challenge. I don't think Bethune's unbeatable. Obviously, they dropped the game. So if Pine Bluff can score, I think they got a good shot in that game because Bethune-Cookman, which we'll cover later, has not really been shooting lights out this season. Number 9 right now is really only number 9 because of where they are in the standings right now. I really think this team is not going to be in this spot for long. Um, and obviously that's Grambling. They got up to a rough start. Right now they're 1-3, 4-13 overall. They won their last game. They snapped a 3-game losing streak in conference. Right now, I don't really know, what Grambling, what their issue is right now. I don't know if their issue is more just a hangover from last season, or they still, they lost some key guys as well. So I think they're trying to find, I think they're trying to find that chemistry with the newer guys, mixing with some of the guys who are already there. Um, Katavius Dozier hasn't really caught fire yet, which I think that guy's always got the potential to pop off. So I'm not really worried about Grambling right now. Now, like I said, I have them at 9 because that's where they are in the standings. But I think in the next couple of weeks, this team is going to make a push, and they're going to be in the mix for a high seed in the tournament. A regular season championship, the door is closing rapidly for that. But getting a top 4 seed still is a good thing, and if they can finish the season, at like 13-5, I think they can get a second seed and get a bye. So I don't really think they're out of the hunt at all. They do have a big game against Southern, which can help propel them forward. Not only in the rankings but the standings. So I think Grambling is a team who is not going to be here right now. But right now they're just not really playing Grambling basketball. They're giving up 70 points a game in conference play. They're only scoring 64. Um, right now they're shooting 42% from the field, and their opponents are shooting 43%, which defensively Grambling is always solid. I do think that's going to pick up. Now their opponents are shooting 42% from 3, which is very uncharacteristic for Grambling. They typically defend that 3-point line extremely well. And they're shooting very, very cold from 3 right now. They're only shooting 23% on the season, and they've only made 3.8 threes per game in conference play. And so they've lost a couple surprising games here and there early in the season. So I really think that this team is going to have to find out who they are. Um, they are the opponents. They've been really solid keeping opponents off the glass. Opponents on average of 31 rebounds a game. Grambling's averaging about 35 again. That number is typically higher because Grambling is typically a more physical inside presence type team. Right now they're not there. They're averaging 3 blocks a game, which is low for them. Um, their assists are down. They're only averaging 9 assists per game. Uh, the turnovers are pretty high for them, which is 15.3. They're only forcing 13.3. So they have really not found their rhythm yet. Um, and right now they just haven't really put it together yet, but I think it's coming. Antoine Burnett right now leads the team in scoring at 13 points per game. Ross and Dozier are both at 10.5. So they still have a balanced attack, and I think it's going to get better. I think they're going to be higher than where they are right now in the next couple of weeks. And like I said, a big game against Southern on Saturday could really help boost them forward. Number 8 could easily be number 7. I put Bama State at 8. Um, not that I have anything against Bama State or even that I like A&M, who is tied with them right now. Not that I like them any better. I just feel like I feel like Bama State. I just don't know. They're pretty even, so I just kind of put them right. I flipped them. Bama State's 2-2. They're 6-11 in conference, right? I mean, that's 2-2 in conference, 6-11 overall. This is a team who can score. They're averaging. Excuse me. They're averaging 78 points per game, which is third in the league. Defensively, they're giving up 72 points per game. So they're playing. They're not really. They're not really locked down on defense, but they are outscoring their opponents, which is why which helps a lot. Um, they shoot the ball pretty well at 45%. The opponents shoot 45% as well. From 3-point range, they're shooting 35%, which is about average. And they make 9.5 threes per game. So they definitely make a lot of threes, and they've taken 107 threes, which is the most in the league. So they let it fly. And they make quite a few of them. So they're gonna be a team that approaches that 3-point line with vigor. They're gonna get there and they're gonna let it fly from outside and really try to make it happen there. Amar Knox is shooting 33% from outside. CJ Hines is at 42. Michael Simpson is at 43. Um, Michael Octave is at 31%. So they do have guys who can knock those shots down right now. Simpson has 9 threes to lead the team, and Hines has 8. So they're not scared to let it fly. Amar Knox is having a good start right now to the season, averaging 17 points per game. Hines is averaging 16. Madlock hasn't really popped off in conference play, but he's a guy who can do a little bit of everything. He can score, he can rebound really well for a guard. So I think they're gonna be a team who, they're Bama State's always an athletic team, and now that they're knocking down threes at a good clip, I think they're gonna be a tough team to beat. They do have a big game on Saturday against Alabama A&M. Right now, Bama State's not rebounding well, which is kind of a surprise. For the last season, they were a bit bigger team. They're averaging 32 rebounds per game, but they're pretty solid keeping their opponents off the boards. Opponents average 33 rebounds per game in conference play. So they're not getting out rebound by a ton. And so that's a good thing. At least you're being close to even in the rebounding battle, which means you're not getting pushed around down low. They only average 9 turnovers a game, so they take care of the ball extremely well. You're not gonna turn them over a lot. You can't come into a game saying, "Oh, we're gonna turn these dudes over and get easy buckets off a turnover." So they force 14 turnovers a game, which is not a great number, but their turnover margin is pretty high. And they lead the league in assist to turnover ratio. They average 12.5 assists per game, which is fifth in the league. So they're a team who not great assist numbers, but they do share the ball pretty well. I'm interested to see them match up against Alabama A&M. They ran into a tough test these last couple games at Jackson State and at Alcorn. The Alcorn game was up for grabs. They actually lost that game in a close fashion by 2 points, and they lost to Jackson State by 7. So losing 2 games on the road to teams who are gonna be in the mix by a combined 9 points is not bad. I think you had the opportunity to win. To win that Alcorn game for sure. Things be looking different in the rankings if you won either one of those 2 games. So I don't think this team is that far off. I think this is a team that's going to make the tournament. Where they finish is going to be, can they avoid those late season swoons like they had last season to some degree? But that game at Alabama A&M, that game against Alabama in the Bridge Builders Classic in Mobile this weekend is going to be huge. And that takes us to our next team, which is the Alabama A&M Bulldogs. Again, they're same record as Bama State. They're 2-2 in conference, 6-11 overall. So they're basically the same. They both are on 2-game losing streaks. They both won their first 2 games against Pine Bluff and Valley, and they both lost their 2 games on their Mississippi trip, including a triple overtime loss to Jackson State, 103-93. That was a game I thought they had locked up in the first overtime. And that, I think this is a team who has the ability to really be a factor in conference play. Coach Hewley, his guys always are pretty solid. The team is pretty solid. They're never really a flashy team, especially last season. But this season, they averaged 78 points per game early in conference play. Defensively, they're giving up a lot of points. They're giving up 77 points per game right now. But they're a team who typically aren't really flashy. Last season they weren't a great shooting team. This season they're shooting 44%. Defensively they're allowing 41%. Um, they're not a team that's gonna really kill you from three. They're only shooting 29% from three right now, and they make about 7.5 threes per game. So they're not really they shoot a lot of threes. They've shot 101 threes. They're one of only 2 teams who have shot over 100 threes. So they shoot a lot of threes. They don't make a lot of them in terms of efficiency. But they do make when you average it out, they do make a good clip at 7.5. They're pretty solid on 3-point defense at 31%. Um, their opponents make about 8 threes a game. They are a very good rebounding team, which is no surprise. They're a team who has a lot of big bodies inside. They average 42.5 rebounds per game. The opponents average 34. So they are winning. They're pretty dominant on the boards in conference play. If I had to say one thing that this team does that this team just struggles with right now, and that's turnovers. They average 22 turnovers a game. That is a recipe for a loss more often than not. Especially when you're playing better teams, you cannot turn the ball over 22 times in a game. And just for reference, Valley, who I think is the worst team in the league, they only average 15 turnovers per game. So a team who has a better record and I think is a better team is more careless, especially early in the season than Valley. Now that number can come down if they can kind of be careful, more careful with the ball. They do force 16 turnovers a game, which is a pretty decent number, but they turn the ball over so much. And I think if there's one thing I would knock them for and that's that. Um, that's gonna be something that really can kill you. If they don't get that under control, I see this team being one of those teams who can really hurt you in March, but maybe won't be a team who finishes above 7 or 8 because the turnovers are gonna kill them. But like I said, they're a solid team inside, and AC Bryant's been playing well right now. He averages 18.7 points per game. Chad Moody and Lorenzo Downey both averaging over 11 points per game. They just are really streaky shooting, and they just don't take care of the ball, and that really kind of scares me. But the fact that they're all physical inside, they have 4 guys averaging over 5 rebounds a game. That helps a lot. And so if you're not shooting well, they're gonna clean those rebounds up, and they're gonna score because they're scoring pretty well this season. But if you could turn them over, which they've done, then that keeps you in game. So I think that's gonna be the biggest thing for them to kind of bounce back from and move up. And like I said, they play Bama State in Mobile on Saturday, so a big game right there. They're definitely gonna shake this 7-8 spot up and move some people around. That takes us to our number 6 spot. Now 6, 5, and 4 can be switched around. I kind of just kind of move them around a little bit. I put Texas Southern at 6. Now I don't I think they're gonna be as usual a team that is gonna be in the mix. They're 2-1. They did have a game against Pine Bluff postponed, so they could easily beat probably 3-1. But right now they're 2-1, and so they beat Grambling already, and they beat Valley. So that's kind of in terms of standings, they haven't really beat anybody good yet. But I think Grambling's gonna be a good team, so I don't really hold that win against them. I think that's going to be in the future. There's going to be a good win, and I do think in March the team is going to be until proven otherwise, and they don't make a tournament. I'm going to always count TSU as a tournament team until they prove otherwise. Now they didn't really, they did, they had a good run. They made the championship last season. They lost to Grambling. They're gonna always be in the mix. And so until they don't do it, I'm gonna always hold them in that echelon. So I think they're gonna still be there right now. Um, they're probably gonna be a team I move up as if their wins stack up. Um, they have a tough slate at home this weekend. They get Alcorn and Jackson State. So you're gonna find out a lot about this team. You're gonna find out a lot about this team this week. Right now, when you look at what they're doing, they're averaging about 70 points per game. Defensively, they're allowing 62, it was third in the league. So they're really keeping teams off the scoreboard. They're scoring pretty well. Um, they're not shooting well though. They're shooting 38% from the field, but they're defensively allowing a 39%. So they're playing pretty solid defense there. Um, they're shooting 35% from three. So even though they're struggling inside the arc, they're actually not that bad outside the arc. They're making about 8 threes a game, um, which is fourth in the league. One thing, like I said, one thing about TSU is that they typically a team that has good size and they're averaging about 38 rebounds a game. Their opponents are averaging 41. So they've gotten beaten on the boards. Even though they won two out of their three games, they got beaten on the boards in those games. And so that's something that they're going to have to clean up as they move forward. And they have a good turnover margin, 5.33. They're averaging 13 turnovers a game, which is not bad at all. And they forcing 18, which is the most in the conference. So they are forcing a lot of turnovers, and they're not really turning it over. I think that's keeping them in games, even though they're not winning the rebounding battle. Um, right now, this team is a team that they don't really have that guy right now. They don't have that PJ Henry type of guy or a CC type guy that can really score. But Kavion McLean is averaging 14 points per game. He's shooting 39%. He's averaging 14 points per game overall. We look at what they're doing in conference play. Zaire Hayes leads the team right now at 16.6 points per game. He's shooting 35% from three. McLean is averaging 10.6 in conference. He's averaging 38% from three. And Dwayne Posey is averaging 10 points per game. So, and Kenny Hunter, who's a guy who's a big force inside, he's averaging 9 points per game and 7 rebounds per game. He has right now he's sitting on 6 steals and 7 blocks. So he's a defensive force. He's potentially defensive player of the year. And so that's a good anchor for your defense. And TSU is gonna always be a team that's kind of a more balanced type of offense. And so if they're shooting inside the arc increases, I think they'll be in a better spot right now. Like I said, they're 2-1 right now, 5-11 overall, and they won their last 2 games. And they have 2 big games right now Saturday against Alcorn and Jackson State. They get Alcorn on Saturday and Jackson on Monday. If they win those 2 games, they're gonna climb because Alcorn is right in front of them and Jackson's in front of them. If they drop those games, they're gonna slide, depending on what people below them do. But until they don't do anything in March, I'm gonna keep them here. I'm kind of giving them the same grace I'm giving Grambling. Until they prove otherwise, I'm gonna always keep them floating around in a good spot. And until they prove otherwise, then that's where they're gonna be. Number 5, I put Bethune-Cookman. They did beat Grambling on Saturday. So that's still a solid win, even though Grambling's record is not good right now. They beat them 65-59. That was a game they had a big lead. Grambling came back, but they held them off, and they beat FAMU to open up the season, who obviously is not a good team right now. They fell behind to Southern early on Monday and never really got the game below 12 points. So Southern basically led their game wire to wire. They were very cold shooting in that game. I think they only made like 2 threes in that game. And this is a team who I think they have right now, statistically, I think they're a team that has to keep the game low and slow. They're averaging 60 points per game. Now they are a good team in terms of scoring defense. They only allow 61 points per game. They're getting outscored by 1, but that 61 points per game is the lowest number in the conference. So they're not, they're a team who's not going to allow a lot of points, and they're not really scoring a lot of points. And like I said, in the Southern game, that really hurt them because their shooting was just their shooting was just poor. And right now they're at 2-1 in conference, 5-11 overall. They lost one game. Um, their shooting just hasn't really been there right now. They're only shooting 37% from the field. Defensively, they lead the league at 37%. So they do play good defense. The opponents only shoot 21% from three, but right now they're shooting 31% from three. And like I said, they coming into the game Monday, they were shooting at a pretty decent clip. Only going two for whatever is definitely going to drop your numbers. And right now they're only averaging 4.7 threes a game. They have to get their offense going, and they miss guys like Deshaun Dyson and why can't I think? I'm sorry, I'm blanking. But they're missing some key guys. I'm blanking on guys. Um, right, Zion Harmon. I don't know why I was blanking on his name, but they're missing guys like that who were very explosive guards who could shoot from deep and penetrate and score. So they're still trying to find their way this season. I think if their offense can get better, I think they'll be a better team. Right now, they're not a deep team. Right now, they're only playing, I think, like 8 guys, so they're not really deep, and that's hurting them as well. Right now, Brian Freeman is averaging 15 points per game, um, and so, like I said, they're just not really getting it done on the offensive side of the ball yet. But I do think the potential is there if those guys can start to put the ball in the basket consistently and become that team like they were in previous years. I do think they're going to be in the mix. I don't know if they're a team that's going to contend for the conference championship, but I do think they're a team that's going to be dangerous because their defense is really good right now. And if they can continue that, then I think that's going to help because defense travels. And if they can play good defense and the offense moves up a tick, I think they'll be a better team moving forward in terms of being a tough out. They do have two winnable games on this weekend against Pine Bluff and Valley, so they can clean those two up on Saturday and Monday. Then they'll find themselves in a good spot heading into the later portions of the schedule, which just looking at what they have after this weekend. Um, next weekend they they get where is it? Next weekend they get why am I? Next weekend they have a trip to Mississippi. They get Jackson and Alcorn on next Saturday, next Monday. So they need these two wins here to put them in a position to face two teams who are ahead of them in my rankings, and one team that they're actually tied with in the standings. And that team right now is Alcorn. Now Alcorn doesn't have a good overall record. They actually won their first game of the season on Saturday, but I think, again, Coach Bussey is a guy who I think his team is going to always be in the mix. And so I'm giving a lot of teams grace early. I think it's really early to say that this team is a contender. And I'm leaning more toward giving teams grace who I know historically are going to beat up. Right now, Alcorn, they're really, they're not really playing great, but they were able to pick up two wins against two teams who I think are going to be dangerous teams in conference. Um, right now, they're scoring 66 points per game defensively. They're allowing 63, so they're not really allowing a lot of points. They're not really scoring a lot of points either. But Alcorn is a team who typically shoots well, especially from outside. And right now, they're shooting 45% from the field, and defensively, they're only allowing 38. So they're playing pretty solid defense there. Their 3-point shooting has not been good this season. They only made 10 threes this season in conference play, which is the lowest in the league, and they're shooting 23%. Their opponents right now are shooting 31%. So they're playing decent 3-point defense, but their 3-point shooting is just not good right now. And they're only making 3.3 threes per game. That number does have to increase. And that's a benefit of, and that's actually, having multiple games at home. They've played all three of their games at home right now. So they haven't been on the road and they're not shooting well. That concerns me a little. If there's anything that makes me kind of scratch my head right now is that they're not making shots. They have three guys who have made more than one three this season. So they just aren't shooting well from outside, and that can change. But when you're shooting poor at home, that makes me nervous when you're actually going on the road, which they are going to Texas this weekend. So I think the pressure is going to be up a little bit. If they can, they're winning even with the poor shooting. If they can make that better, then I think they can find themselves in a decent spot. Marcus Tankersley is averaging 17 and a half points per game right now to lead the team. Um, all corners they've in recent years they've had their physical presence with Jeremiah Kendall. Obviously they lose him, and they're not great on the boards right now. They're at 32.7 rebounds per game, but they are pretty solid against the opponents. Opponents averaging 31 rebounds per game. So they're not getting beat up on the boards. They're just not really where they normally would be. Um, they turn the ball over about 14 times per game. They force about 13.7. So that number's pretty even. Um, they average 9.7 assists per game, which is it puts them at eighth. They defensively they don't really block a lot of shots. They average like 1.6 blocks per game. So their inside presence isn't really there right now, in these early games. But I think Alcorn is gonna be there. I think if they can come out this road trip with a solid outing, and to me on the road, a solid outing, depending on who your opponents are is going 1-1. Obviously everybody wants to go 2-0 on the road, at home, whatever. But if you can split your road games, especially if you have tough opponents, teams that are even with you or ahead of you in the standings. If you can go 1-1, I think that doesn't hurt you. And so I think if they can go at least 1-1, I think that helps them a lot. Their shooting has to improve from outside. You're not gonna win a lot of games shooting the percentages that they're shooting from outside. So that if there's one thing, like I said, that I would say just has me scared right now is that, and I do think it can improve. But they're gonna have a tough task against two teams that are playing pretty well right now. So we'll see how they do. Number three is Prairie View right now. The Panthers are 3-1 in conference. They're sitting at 4-13 overall. They're on a 2-game winning streak. They swept their road trip against Pine Bluff and Valley. And like I said, they made a nice comeback against Pine Bluff. They were trailing big early, but locked down on defense and was able to really score. They have a guy who is scoring pretty well as well, and that's Tanaj Petway. Um, he's scoring extremely well right now. He's averaging 24 points per game in conference play, reigning conference player of the week. He's shooting 38% from the 3-point line. Um, Braylon Bush is shooting 43%. Orlando Horton is shooting 66%. Um, Marcel Bryant is shooting 75%. And these are guys who are shooting, more than three threes, who are attempting more than three threes. So they're shooting the ball extremely well from outside. And like I say, they have a pretty balanced attack. Bush is averaging 12 and a half points per game. Horton is at 10.2. Bryant is at 9. So they have weapons, and they're playing pretty well. Their only loss right now is to Southern, which was a game that they tried to make a comeback late, but couldn't really get over the hump. They're averaging 75 and a half points per game. They're giving up 67, so they're playing pretty good defense in terms of a scoring defense. They're shooting 50% from the field. Defensively, the opponents are shooting at 45%, so they're not really um, stopping teams from scoring. But they play good 3-point defense. They're on 25% from three for the opponents. Prairie View shooting 40% from three, which is second in the conference. They make about 7 threes per game. So again, that's not a bad number. Um, they don't rebound well. If there's one thing I'll say, they don't rebound well. They average about 28 rebounds per game. Um, and they're giving up 35.3. So they're not really solid rebounding. I think that can hurt them moving forward against more physical teams. If they continue to lose that rebounding battle, that can hurt them in games. But right now they're shooting so well from outside that maybe they could overcome that. They're averaging 15 turnovers per game, but they force 18. So the turnovers are a little high for me, but they're forcing a good bit of turnovers. They have the third most turnovers forced right now, so that kind of offsets things right there. Um, and they average 12 assists per game, so they share the ball pretty well. And they average 5.2 blocks per game, so they may not rebound well at this point, but they're really protecting the paint and blocking a ton of shots. So they're doing well there, and they average 11 steals per game. So defensively they're right there. Rebounding, I would like to see that get better. I don't know how long they can shoot as well as they're shooting, but having a guy like Petway who can go for 25, 30 points in a game is definitely going to be a good thing. When you have a guy who can get the ball and score, in this conference, that helps you a lot. That can get you over the hump in a lot of games. But I don't know if they're going to be able to keep the pace that they're at right now. And these two games this weekend are going to tell a lot about this team. If they win both of these games, then I think they're going to be a big factor in the race. If they drop them both, they're not out of anything, but that can kind of pull them back to the pack. So at home, I always think 2-0 at home is vital. You don't really want to go 1-1 or 0-2 at home. You always want to go 2-0. Now it doesn't always happen, but to me, 2-0 at home is definitely the goal. And like I said, 1-1 on the road is a good thing to me. But I do think the Panthers have potential if they can win these two games. Or I think they find themselves in a good spot now. The second team we have is Jackson State. They're one or two undefeated teams in conference play. They haven't they had a bad non-conference slate in terms of record. They came in the conference play at 0-13. They're 3-13 now. They're 3-0 conference. They won 3 games in a row. I like this team, man. I think this team is a team that is they're going to be a dangerous team. They have size inside with Mansell, who can rebound. They have guards that can shoot lights out. If they get hot, they can. I think they can really hurt you in a lot of ways. And Jackson State is never a pushover. And this season, I don't think they're. I think they're going to be a team who really is going to be tough. Kevion Hunt right now leads the team, averaging 15.3 points per game. Romel Mansell is a guy inside who does a lot of work, averaging 14 points and 7 rebounds. He's a double-double magnet. He's always a potential double-double. Dorian McMillan is a guy who I think as a young guy is shooting extremely well. He didn't have a great game Monday, but he's 10 or 17 from three, shooting 59%. That's a weapon. He made 7 threes against Bama State. That's a weapon. He's averaging 12 points per game. Ruffin's a guy who can play. He's coming back. He's been out. He came back playing well. I think this is going to be a tough team to beat. Yeah, I do think they're going to be right there in the mix at the end. As long as they can continue to do what they're doing, they're leading the conference, averaging 84 points per game. They give up 77, which, when you score a lot of points, you're going to give up points. And they gave up 93 against Alabama and them, but they scored 103. So if you can outscore teams, it don't really matter that much. They're shooting 41% from the field. Defensively, they're allowing 44% shooting. 3-point shooting, they lead the conference at 42%. They shoot the three extremely well. They make 9.7 threes per game, almost 10 threes per game. So they're shooting efficiently. They don't shoot a lot of threes. They shot 69 threes in conference play, which is like middle of the pack. But they make a good clip and they're shooting a good percentage. 3-point defense, they're at 31%. Rebounding, they're not a tremendous rebounding team, but they have guys who can do work on the boards. They're averaging 36 rebounds per game. The opponents are at 30 at 40, so they're getting out rebounded. But I do think this is a team that can make some things happen on the boards. They lead the league in turnover margin. They only turn the ball over 12 times per game. They average 18.3, which is second in the league in terms of forced turnover. So they're good there. They average 12.7 assists as well. So they're a really solid team, and they have guys who can pop off from outside. They have guys who can do work inside, and so I think this Texas trip is going to be a good gauge for them. If they can go on the road and win both of these games, then they will be in a good spot sitting at 5-0 before they come back home. Um, with the Florida teams. So they have a good chance to make a good push and keep themselves in the top part of the standings. If something goes wrong, then they're gonna slide, obviously. But I think this team is gonna be one of those teams who is gonna be right there the whole season because they are very dangerous. And I want to see them continue to do what they're doing, and they could easily be in the number one spot. If this team in front of them wasn't sitting at 4-0 in conference. Southern's 4-0 right now. They've won 4 games in a row. They're 9-8 overall. They're the only team in conference right now with a winning non-conference record. And they play, a tough non-conference league, but they do have um, two um, two non-conference D1 victories. So that kind of is a feather in their cap right now. Whereas teams like Prairie View and Pine Bluff and even Jackson State to an extent have a guy who can really go off. Southern's more of a I don't want to say they're more of a team than anybody else. Everybody's a team, but they play more of a numbers game. They play a lot of guys. They play at least 10 guys every game. They play five at a time. That sounds stupid. Everybody play five at a time. But they play, two 5-man units. They sub in bulk. So they don't necessarily do a one for one sub. They usually sub out 4 or 5. And they play platoon basketball. So they're not gonna have the individual numbers that a lot of teams have. But they do have a lot of guys who could any given night be their top scorer. And in conference play, they've had multiple guys do that. Right now, Jordan Johnson, he's averaging 11 points per game, which is the only guy on Southern's team averaging double digits in conference play. Derek Tezano, Delmarie Jones are both at 8 points per game. AJ Barnes is at 7 points per game. Denaje Thomas is at 7. Michael Jacobs is at 6. Cam Ambery is at 6. All these guys have had really good games in conference play, but they don't have necessarily that one guy that you say, okay, go get that bucket. Jordan Johnson is leading the team. He's 12 or 26 from three, shooting 46%. Southern rebounds extremely well for a Southern team. I haven't seen a team from Southern rebound as well as this team has done early. They average 77 points per game. They only give up 62. And so they've won all of their games in decent fashion. The TSU game, they built a big lead, had to hold on. Prairie View, same. Prairie View game was more tight, but they had to hold on a spirited rally at the end. Obviously, they blew out FAMU, and they won wire to wire against Bethune in a game that was 12 to 16 points all game long. So they've been playing well. Like I said, they shoot the ball well. They're shooting 47%. They defend well. They're shooting 30. Their opponents are shooting 38%. They're shooting 37% from three, and the opponents are shooting 30% from three. If I had to say Achilles heel for Southern, it's free throws. They only shoot 58% from three. That's gonna kill you at some point. You have to make free throws. So if there's one Achilles heel for Southern right now, I say it's free throws. They average 38 rebounds per game. They lead the league in rebounding margin. The opponents on the average 29 rebounds per game. They don't turn the ball over a ton. They turn the ball over 13.3 times per game. They force 16 and a half. And they share the ball well. They average 14 assists per game, 14.8, which is second in the league. So they do share the ball well. They don't turn it over a lot. When you play so many guys, you would expect that turnover number to be higher, but they take care of the ball. I think the point guards are all solid. They just don't have that one guy that you can say, okay, he's going to be the guy that goes for 20 this night and get it done. They just have a bunch of guys who are going to be between 15 and 12 points per game, 15 and 10 points per game, and they're getting it done that way. And they block a lot of shots right now. They're blocking 4.2 shots per game, and they're averaging 10 and a half steals per game. So they're playing really well early. And that's been Southern. That's been who Southern is the last few years. So until they can do it all year, that number one spot may just be temporary. Um, Southern has a lot to prove to me, especially because they've done this in recent years, jump out early and then fade. If this team can continue to do what they're doing with their bench play, they're top 10 in the country in bench scoring. They had 60 bench points against FAMU, 32 against Bethune. If they can score, if that bench is productive, then Southern gonna be productive. If that bench has a cold night and the starters don't really play well, then yeah, they're gonna drop games. And that's to me is gonna be where this team, where we figure out if this team what they're doing if it's sustainable. Right now it looks good, but can they sustain that all season? That's going to be the case. That's going to be the key. They have a big game against Grambling. Grambling's record is not good, but Grambling's beaten Southern multiple times in the last few years. So Grambling has the edge. I think they beat them like 5 or 6 times in a row. So they have the edge. Southern has to beat them. They don't have to beat Southern. Um, and then after that, after those games, they get after those games they get Pine Bluff and Valley on the road. So they have a chance to make to stretch their lead a little bit. They can win those upcoming games, but it all starts with Grambling. They haven't beaten Grambling in a long time, so I'm not gonna say they're gonna beat them. They have to prove it, and they have to prove that they have staying power. And right now, the way they're playing, I like that approach. But is it going to be a consistent thing every night? That's going to be the key. And so that's going to do it for today's show, man. I thank y'all for tuning in. We're going to do this every Wednesday, and these rankings are going to change every Wednesday. And so with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide, C-Well signing out, and I will catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.